Have you ever sat in a meeting, coffee lukewarm, and found yourself just nodding along through an impossible deadline? You look around, everyone else is nodding too, but in your gut, you know the project is doomed before it even starts. You smile, agree, walk out, and later wonder why things fell apart. Today, we're going to unpack why that silent nod is actually a ticking time bomb, and I'll give you a simple, actionable way to break the cycle before your next project even kicks off. Stick around to the end, and I'll share a quick self check question that will change how you lead your team forever. Hey everyone, I'm Kiran Lingaraj, and this channel is all about turning those everyday workplace hiccups into opportunities for real growth. If you've ever felt the pressure to just go along when leadership throws out an aggressive timeline, this video is for you. We spend years sharpening our technical skills, yet almost zero time learning how to spot it and fix the illusion of agreement that silently sabotages projects. By the end of this comprehensive exploration, you'll know exactly how to diagnose false consensus, invite the missing voice, and lock in real commitment before anyone leaves the room. Let's dive in. First, let's name the problem. That quiet chorus of nods you hear in a meeting? It's what the E8 communication architecture calls R2 compliance, a passive, self-protective reaction where people yield their judgment just to escape the immediate social tension of the room. It feels safe in the moment. You avoid an awkward confrontation, but it's a silent record. Nothing was tested, nothing was verified, and nothing was truly owned. Think of it like signing a contract without reading a single word just because a pushy salesperson is staring at you. On paper, it looks binding, but internally, there's zero ownership or understanding. The same thing happens in a Tuesday morning project kickoff. You ask, well, are we all on board? The team nods. You write unanimous agreement in the notes, and you walk away feeling great. Yet, you've built a foundation on absolutely nothing. Why does this happen? It's not laziness, it's hardwired survival psychology. When you're in a room with a leader, social pressure creates instant interpersonal discomfort. Your brain wants to relieve that discomfort as fast as possible. So nodding and saying yes becomes a path of least resistance. It's the same cognitive bias that makes us stick with a decision just to stay consistent, or that creates cognitive dissonance when what we know, of course the timeline is impossible, clashes with what we're pressured to say, and we agree. To ease this stress, we yield our judgment. The result? A false consensus that looks perfect on paper but hides a fatal flaw waiting to explode later. R2 compliance is dangerous because it sort of masquerades as alignment while actually suppressing the truth. The leader walks away thinking they have deliberate buy-in, but what they really have is a blank record setting the project up for failure before it even starts. Now, to see just how perilous a silent record can be, let's hop back to 1969 and the landmark Supreme Court case, Boykin versus Alabama. Edward Boykin, a young African-American man, pleaded guilty to 5 counts of common law robbery in Alabama court. The entire hearing lasted 5 minutes. 5 minutes for 5 counts. The judge asked almost no questions, and Boykin himself said absolutely nothing on the record. He just stood there. Based on that completely silent record, Boykin was sentenced to death. The Supreme Court later reversed the decision, led by Justice William Douglas, who broke down a core legal doctrine. A silent record is legally insufficient to show voluntary consent. You simply cannot infer knowing voluntary agreement from silence. Silence is not agreement. That legal principle, silence does not equal consent, should be gospel everywhere. Yet in modern corporate environments, we ignore it every single day. We treat a room full of nodding heads as proof of consensus, when in reality it's just a blank record disguising a danger. The psychological error is identical to the culture. We mistake a lack of friction for genuine lack of objection and for genuine agreement. And we pay the price. Yeah, we pay the price later. Only in our case, the stakes are project failure, lost trust, and wasted resources instead of a life. Now, let's make this concrete with a scenario the sources call the David situation. It's Thursday at 10 a.m. The room's a little too warm. A whiteboard at the front shows the Q3 launch date in green marker. You, the leader, look directly at your lead engineer, David, and ask point blank, David, can we hit this date? The whole room swivels to watch him. David glances at his laptop, sees that the database migration is 3 weeks behind and the servers are near capacity. He knows it's impossible. Yet, he nods and says, yes, we'll make it work. The tension evaporates. You write down that you have alignment, and you feel great. Later, when the project fails, you feel betrayed, thinking David lied. But the source explicitly says David did not lie. Saying yes, when you know it's a no, isn't deception. It's a fast, self-protective reaction. David's sole purpose isn't to trick anyone. It's to survive a power imbalance. In the E8 framework, you as a leader are operating as an R5 dominant. Your question isn't a genuine inquiry. It's a thinly veiled demand for compliance. Agreeing is simply the fastest way for David to stop feeling uncomfortable and protect his job. That moment of silence, the nod, was never real ownership. It was a silent record, and you mistook it for agreement. The betrayal you feel later actually originated right there in the kickoff meeting, when you accepted a performative yes instead of digging for the truth. So, how do we break this cycle? The E8 system gives us a concrete tool, the Elacora E8 awareness point. It's a highly actionable pivot you can use the moment that dangerous silence falls over the room and everyone's just nodding. First, take your hands off the table. That simple act is a physical pattern interrupt. When you're leading a meeting, your physical momentum, that's leaning forward and ready to write done in your notes, tied to your cognitive rush towards closure. Now, lifting your hands stops that automatic urge and creates a half-second pause. In that pause, run an internal diagnostic. 1. Notice your physical cues. Acknowledge any heat in your neck, racing heart, or tension. Label the stress without judgment. 2. Recognize the evidence quality. Is anyone bringing up constraints, risks, or data? If the room was silent on these fronts, the evidence is low. 3. Name the power imbalance. You have structural authority. The team is likely in R2 compliance to avoid discomfort. Once you've diagnosed power and evidence, remind yourself of one liberating truth. You do not need to fight. Think Aikido or Judo. Instead of meeting resistance with a brick wall of logic, which would be the R5 confrontation, you step aside, let their momentum carry them forward, and guide that energy toward the actual problem that is the missing data. Now, with your physiology reset and your awareness clear, it's time to speak. The E8 system calls this a clarified bearing at intensity level 2. Let's break down what that sounds like, and more importantly, what it feels like. Imagine intensity as a scale from 1 to 5. Level 1 is a whisper, barely present. Level 5 is shouting, table banging, aggressive dominance. Level 2 is steady, quiet, and clear. It's not weak, it's composed. Why quietly? Because volume signals dominance. Raising your voice, even slightly, is a physical challenge to their space and authority. Speaking quietly does the opposite. It shows you're not threatening their rank, lowers cortisol in the room, and literally forces them to lean in to hear you, breaking their defensive posture altogether. Now here's the precise phrasing step by step. First, align with their goal. Look them in the eye and say, I want to hit this target. Boom. You move from face-to-face confrontation to shoulder-to-shoulder problem solving. You've established shared intent. To succeed, we must reconcile the launch date with our current server capacity and migration timeline. Notice the wording? You're not saying, your date is impossible. You're saying, to succeed, which we both want, we must reconcile these two data points. Now you've taken yourself and the team out of the conflict and placed the tension squarely between the target and the reality, turning it into an objective puzzle to solve. Finally, invite them into the work. Ask, can we map out the next steps together? You're shifting from debate to joint investigation. What if they push back? Say they cross their arms and declare, I don't care about the constraints, figure it out. That's why I hired you. Classic resistance. The rule of the clarify bearing is simple. Do not take the bait. Don't defend your competence. Don't attack their stubbornness. Instead, loop back to the evidence, still at intensity level 2. I understand the mandate. To hit this date, we need to look at Q3 shipping bottlenecks. Which of these 3 areas should be prioritized for the initial rollout? Now you keep forcing the conversation back to physical reality, refusing to let it become about ego. By relentlessly anchoring them to the evidence, you bypass their reactance. There's no threat to fight because you're not challenging their authority. You're inviting them to solve a shared problem. You redirect the energy they'd spend defending their ego into finding a solution. You've avoided the delayed failure of R2 and the instant shutdown of R5. Now, getting the truth on the table is huge, but we still have one more trap. The team sliding back into vague, comfortable silence before the meeting ends. That's where responsible closure comes in. Before anyone leaves, you must force explicit commitment by asking 3 mandatory accountability questions. 1. What have we concluded? State the conclusion out loud. 2. Who owns the next move? Name the person responsible. 3. By when? Set a clear deadline. When you ask these 3 questions aloud, you destroy any remaining silent record. You can't hide behind a nod when you're verbally stating what you own. This raises the psychological cost of staying silent and makes the agreement real, actionable, and owned. In the David story, after using the clarify bearing, the team spent the next 20 minutes reallocating resources and pushing the launch back by a week. A short-sighted leader might mourn losing a week, but the truth is, they gained reality. That honest 1-week delay saved 3 months of catastrophic failure, preserved trust, and avoided massive financial cost, a huge return on investment for just half a second pause. Here's where it gets personal, and where the framework becomes a mirror. The next time a junior team member brings you bad news, challenges a timeline you set, or pushes back on a project scope, notice your own reaction. Do you feel that heat in your own neck? Did you catch yourself thinking, they're just not working hard enough, or dismissing their point as a straw man? If so, pause and ask yourself, am I actually evaluating their facts, or am I instinctively defending my own authority? That question, am I the executive at the mahogany table, refusing to look at the supply chain data because I feel my status is being challenged, is perhaps the most valuable takeaway. Leadership isn't just about managing up. It's about managing our own ego so we can create psychological safety for those below us. When we model the clarify bearing quiet, evidence-focused, collaborative, we give our team permission to do the same. Let's recap quickly. 1. Recognize the danger of silent agreement. R2 compliance creates a blank record that looks like consensus but hides real risks. 2. Understand why logic alone fails. Psychological reactance makes those in power defend their status when they feel threatened, even if the data is sound. 3. Apply the E8 solution. Physically reset, hands off the table, run an awareness check, notice cues, name power asymmetry, and lower evidence. Then speak with a clarified bearing at intensity level 2, that is, align on goals, anchor in on evidence, invite collaboration. 4. Close responsibly. Ask the 3 accountability questions to lock in real commitment before anyone leaves. 5. Turn the lens inward. Use the same framework to check your own reactivity when receiving feedback. Now, if you found this useful, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you never miss a video on navigating workplace dynamics with skill and grace. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What worked? What didn't? Drop a comment below. Let's learn from each other. Remember, leadership begins when reaction becomes conscious choice. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.